Welcome to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, sponsored by Con Edison, part of the BCW's podcast network, the show that will dissect critical policy issues, explore the art of advocacy and politics, and share insights on how to make your voice heard in today's ever-changing political landscape. I'm your host, John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Business Council of Westchester. For many of our listeners who have tuned into Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, you know that the BCW, which is the county's largest business membership organization that focuses on economic development and advocacy, one of our key legislative priorities has been the changing energy landscape in New York. Westchester County has found itself in the epicenter of those changes with the closing of Indian Point, with gas moratoriums that were imposed on the southern part of the county. And the BCW has been laser focused on trying to think of what we need to do to not only have a new, renewable, reliable energy grid, but how we have a grid that we can use to promote and recruit and retain businesses to come to Westchester County. And our two guests today really are leaders in helping us get to that point. Bob Keefe is the Executive Director of E2. E2 is a national nonpartisan group of business leaders, investors, and professionals from every sector of the economy who advocate for smart policies that are good for the economy and good for the environment. E2's more than 10,000 members and supporters work and do businesses in every state of the county, coming from diverse businesses, backgrounds ranging from clean energy and clean tech to real estate, finance, and beyond. As the executive director, Bob oversees all aspects of E2's work and its staff and chapters stretching from New York to San Diego. Bob speaks regularly about the clean energy economy and the economic benefits of smart environmental policies. He has testified before Congress and numerous state legislatures and has appeared in media outlets including the New York Times, Washington Post, Fox, CNN, and others. He's also the author of 2 books on the economics of climate change. He served as the Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, as a California-based national reporter for Cox Newspapers and Cox News Services, and as a technology editor for the Austin American Statesman. Bob, welcome to the show.
Oh, so great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Our other guest is someone who has appeared on Advocacy and Politics Unplugged and is an important member of the Business Council of Westchester, Ron Kamen, who is the founder of EarthKind Energy and the director of the Business Council of Westchester's Clean Energy Action Coalition, which consists now of 110 BCW members, all of them who are, again, laser focused on helping to build Westchester County's new reliable, renewable energy infrastructure. Ron, thank you for all the work that you do as well.
Thank you so much, John.
So, Bob, let's get right to your work at E2. We're very excited about the fact that E2 is working with the Business Council's Clean Energy Action Coalition, and we have a lot of work that we have to do. But just reading your bio to our listeners, you started in journalism, obviously, and had a great career. What brought you to E2?
Well, look, I spent most of it, as you mentioned, I spent 20 plus years as a journalist. A lot of that was as a business journalist, a technology journalist, and a little bit covering the White House and Congress there at the end and for a few years. But you know what I grew to know, John, is the power of business voices in impacting policy, both good and bad. Right. And when I learned about E2 and the things that we've been doing now for 25 years, making the business and economic case for smart climate and clean energy policies, and being pretty successful at it, I thought, man, that's how we harness this power. That's how we make change in America. So what we do is we, again, bring our members, our 10,000 plus members and supporters around the country, and we provide a conduit for them to tell the stories about how policies are impacting their business when it comes to climate and clean energy, and tell them directly to lawmakers, whether it's in Albany or in Washington, D.C. And we do a lot of work tracking the clean economy growth, clean energy jobs, and so forth around the country as well. And yeah, as you mentioned, New York is at the center of a lot of this.
Well, and we want to focus on that, but I have to ask, and obviously you have chapters from New York all the way to the West Coast and San Diego. So obviously you're dealing with state legislatures, all who are at different times in terms of where they are with energy policy. How do you balance that, and what kind of coalitions does E2 look to build in each state?
Well, we balance it because we have nine chapters, and we have staff that work with and on the ground with all of those chapters. So we feel like we have a pulse on what business people, especially in this space, want and need, and what the policy opportunities are in those specific states. And you're right, it's going to be different when in New York than it is in North Carolina. We got our start in California 25 years ago, working on what then were the first ever clean vehicle standards, greenhouse gas emission standards for cars, which ultimately resulted in 17 states, including New York, I believe, adopting those policies to push automakers to make cleaner vehicles, because it's good for our environment, obviously, but also it spurs innovation. When we got started, those Prius thingies were just coming out, and everybody thought, who knows, maybe we can have electric vehicles someday, but we can't do it without the policy to send the market signal to businesses, in that case, automakers, that look, this is the way we can move forward. You can continue to grow, create jobs, drive economic growth, and by the way, reduce the emissions that we all have to breathe, and help clean the water that we all have to drink as well.
Ron, at one of our first meetings, once we had started the Clean Energy Action Coalition at the Business Council of Westchester, you thought that working with E2 would be important, but you had already had some really good experiences with E2. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, John, thank you so much. So I first came across E2 in 2014. So it's been 11 years now, where I was very impressed with their work with military, which has been leading on a lot of clean energy adoption and policies for all the reasons that the military needs to have them: reliability, affordability, deployability all across the world, really. And then also on their work with agriculture, in addition to the vehicle work that Bob had mentioned previously. So good for the economy, good for the environment, goes hand in hand, made total sense to me. That's where I've come from all my career, and it was just a natural match, and I've been honored to be a New York chapter director since about that time too. So it's been a great experience, and I'm really happy I can bring these two outstanding organizations together to be able to have an impact in Westchester and beyond.
You're listening to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, part of the BCW Podcast Network. Our guests this afternoon are Bob Keefe, who's the executive director of E2, and Ron Kamen, who is the founder of EarthKind Energy and the director of the Business Council's Clean Energy Action Coalition. Obviously, these are very volatile political times. As we record this podcast episode, the Senate is now negotiating and rewriting parts of what President Trump calls the big, beautiful bill. But there are obviously some important components in the energy field that we are advocating for, and we advocated for in the House, and we advocated for, and we'll continue to advocate for over these next few days with the Senate. Bob, talk to us a little bit about really where E2 is focusing their energies right now. Excuse the pun.
Well, we all need to be energized right now, John, because there's a lot at risk here. Look, we first started getting involved in working on what Congress is about to apparently overturn here pretty soon, which is the Inflation Reduction Act. And we started working on that because it was not only the biggest climate policy that we've ever seen in this country, it's what I believe is the biggest economic policy that we've seen, at least in our lifetimes. And we can all see the gray in each other's hair right now, by the way. But what has happened since that policy was passed just 2.5 years ago has just been amazing. We've had more than 400 major clean energy projects and factories, solar panel factories, battery factories, EV factories, et cetera, $130 billion worth of business investment. Just in those 2.5 years, 120,000 new jobs announced. In New York alone, there's been more than 800 million in projects, ranging from battery and wind turbine factories, parts, to big solar installations like the big one at JFK recently, for instance. That's the good news. The bad news is, if we ever wanted a policy in this country that will kill jobs, make it harder to generate the electricity that we need and to meet growing demand, thanks to everything from AI to data centers, if we ever wanted to be competitive against China and the rest of the world, The plan that we recently got from the House and that the Senate is looking at as we speak is the plan to kill all of that. And I say that not just because it's my opinion, because what we're seeing happening right now. The other thing we've been tracking at E2 is cancellations of these projects. And what we now know is that there's been more than $15 billion worth of projects canceled just since January. The biggest chunk of those was in April when almost $5 billion in projects. Again, these are factories that are creating jobs. I think 11,000 jobs have been canceled at some of these factories when businesses pulled back on them.
I want to get
the uncertainty that we're getting out of Washington right now.
I want to get right back, because that figure you just threw out at us, $15 billion, is something that we have to discuss and do a deep dive to. We'll be right back to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged after we hear from our sponsor, Con Edison. Con Edison customers, are you looking for an efficient way to heat and cool your home? Consider geothermal heat pumps. These innovative systems turn energy from the ground around your home into cooled or heated air for climate control, providing you significant energy savings and year-round comfort. Con Edison is dedicated to sustainability and helping customers save. That's why they offer incentives for installing geothermal heat pumps. Eligible homeowners could receive rebates that significantly lower their upfront cost. By choosing geothermal, homeowners won't just save money, they'll also reduce their carbon footprint and contribute to a cleaner environment. To learn more about geothermal heat pumps and available incentives, visit coned.com/geothermal. It's a smart choice for both homes and the planet. Welcome back to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, part of the BCW Podcast Network. I'm John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for the Business Council of Westchester. Our guests today are Bob Keefe, who is the Executive Director of E2, and Ron Kamen, who is the founder of EarthKind Energy and the Director of the BCW's Clean Energy Action Coalition. Before the break, Ron, Bob, you just threw out a number that is staggering in terms of the fact that if the Senate goes along with what Congress passed 2 weeks ago, that we could lose $15 billion of contracts and of projects that create thousands of jobs and bring in revenue and work with related businesses in those communities as well. When you're sitting down with legislators and you're telling them and talking to them about that one figure alone, $15 billion, what's their response? I mean, I can't imagine if I'm a member of Congress or a United States Senator and I know that part of that $15 billion is in my district, that I'm going to be putting that in my newsletter and saying I supported eliminating this project. Where's the disconnect?
Well, the disconnect is that communities and businesses in those communities that care about economic development, that care about economic growth, that care about creating jobs and bringing these investments to their communities, need to make sure that their lawmakers understand what is at risk. We do it. We bring business people from different parts of the country in to meet with these lawmakers, but we really need some sustained pressure from the business community to say this is not what we want. And if you look at polls, which we all look at polls, right? They show that these are winning issues for lawmakers. The problem is partisanship comes into play here, and that unfortunately has caused what is potentially an economic wrecking ball. And just to be clear, these are projects like battery storage, Li-Cycle's project in New York that was recently canceled. General Motors canceled an EV factory, $300 million expansion in New York that they were planning. Ørsted and offshore that was working on offshore wind canceled their projects after the president said, we're not going to do any more wind in this country. Those are jobs. Those are economic development stories that unfortunately just aren't going to happen now.
Ron, you're on the front lines in Westchester County and across New York State as well. So you're seeing some of these projects that would have brought, again, so much economic development to those areas in terms of jobs, in terms of revenue, in terms of, again, working with other related businesses in those communities where those projects are going to happen. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And what are the concerns that you have?
Yeah, so John, there's 110 different businesses that are part of the Clean Energy Action Coalition in Westchester with the BCW, and pretty much all of them are just shocked and flabbergasted and trying to figure out what's going on and what are they going to do. But this massive uncertainty and the probability that these tax credits at the current time, these tax incentives are going to disappear, that's a third to two-thirds of major generation and infrastructure projects that are now going to be lost. All those incentives, all that driving force that would create the clean energy economy, that would create the infrastructure with energy generation that we need to be able to maintain our grid and be able to keep the power on days like this 100-degree day. All of that is now at risk of disappearing. And what that means is the loss of jobs, the loss of opportunities, the loss of economic development, the loss of tax revenues, the loss of workforce development. It's across the board just going to be a tremendously impactful and devastating situation that's going to be really hard to overcome and recover from.
Our guest
and Ron, you bring up a great point about energy supplies, right? I mean, right now we're talking about projects that are being canceled and factories that the rebuilding of America's manufacturing base being canceled, essentially. But think about what that means. That means we're not building the solar panels that we need. That means we're not building the wind parks that we need to be competitive with China and other countries. But we're also not deploying that power. And when we have electricity demand expected to rise by 50% by 2040, thanks to AI, thanks to data centers, thanks to everything the three of us plug into a wall and everybody else does as well, we've got to do something to meet that electricity demand. What's the cheapest, quickest power to deploy? Solar, wind, batteries. That's why utilities, 93% of all power put on the grid last year was solar, wind, and batteries.
Well, we're facing two challenges. We're facing the challenge, Bob, that you're dealing with every day, trying to change minds with the legislature, with the members of the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, bringing your business members to meet with those legislators to really hopefully help them understand that these are real numbers. And then in the community side, Ron is leading the efforts to try to work with municipalities that have already put moratoriums in place for solar and battery. And our message to those communities have been very respectful. We understand that there's some quality of life issues that should be addressed and can be addressed. There's some safety issues that you certainly want to address and be done in a responsible way. But if they're going to put these moratoriums in place, what we've asked these municipal leaders is, then what's your plan B?
Absolutely.
And it could go to the same way for the United States Senate in the next 10 days. What's your plan B if you don't include these energy tax credits in the big, beautiful bill? So when you're bringing, again, with all your chapters across the country, and mobilizing businesses, again, what are some of the key talking points that you really try to have those members give to their legislators?
Well, it's about economic development. There should be nothing partisan about creating jobs, driving economic growth, bringing investments to local communities and new opportunities, frankly, in a lot of places that were bypassed by previous economic transitions, making America competitive again, and making sure that we have the energy that we need. Okay, you want to kill solar and wind? You have the perfect question. What are you going to do in response? Now, the governor of New York has recently announced a new nuclear plant, right? That's great. You're going to wait at least 15 to 20 years before something like that comes online, and it's going to cost billions and billions and billions of dollars more than anything we can do with solar, with wind, with batteries. You want to build gas plants? Okay, you would rather have a gas plant in your backyard instead of solar panels at the farm down the road? That's okay. Guess what? You're not going to be able to get a gas turbine for 7 years because they're on back order, and it's going to cost a heck of a lot more money to generate the same amount of energy that you would with a small solar and storage facility. And we need this energy now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of my new favorite, unfortunate phrases is cave. communities against virtually everything. And that's, again, some of the struggles that we're facing in Westchester County, and I'm sure in other parts of New York and in parts of the country. So it is imperative. I want to ask you, because
and it's important, by the way, we've got to do this the right way.
Yep.
The good news is we have the technology to do it now, and with the right policies in place and the right regulations in place, we can do it correctly.
Let me ask you this, because when Ron and I go in front of town boards in Westchester County, especially when it comes to battery storage, there have been some, horrific incidents that have happened. Obviously, the technology continues to evolve. There are different types of batteries now that are being used that need to be discussed. Again, what are some of the key points that you try to bring across throughout the country about the safety of battery storage?
Well, I don't really get into the safety of battery storage. What I talk about is, look, we need to do something to address this issue right now. We have the technology to do it right now. It's going to get better. We talked about my journalism career. The other part, I spent a long time as a technology reporter, and I covered everything from, Apple unveiling that little iPod a long time ago to the dot-com boom and bust and boom again. And one thing that I learned is that we shouldn't shortchange the role of technology. It's going to get better. Look, solar and wind and batteries have taken off just in the past 10 years or so, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. And the prices have come down so dramatically. So it's now the cheapest power available because of the march of technology. That's going to continue to improve. And so who knows? The next batteries will definitely be safer. The next solar panels will definitely be more efficient. But it's not going to happen if we kill all of this right now when it's just getting started, and we turn our backs to innovation as well.
Ron, I know at the Clean Energy Action Coalition you have numerous working groups dealing with different areas, but one is on technology. So can you just in a last minute or two talk to us a little bit about some of the priorities of that working group and how they'll be working with E2 in getting that message across?
Yeah, great, John. Thank you so much. So as Bob said, the fastest, most affordable way to get new generation online is solar and battery storage. That is the key to be able to build the infrastructure that we need that's going to be more resilient when these extreme weather events happen. It's going to be more reliable in terms of grid support on these especially hot and extremely cold days, and it's going to be more affordable, because the nice thing about community solar and solar in general and solar and battery storage is that over the long term it becomes the cheapest power source in the state, just like the last century's investment in renewables hydropower is now, because you build the infrastructure, the water flows, you get cheap energy. You build the infrastructure, the sun shines, you get cheap energy. And again, dealing with the more international stuff, we're talking about competing with China. China has more solar energy than a third of all the U.S. generation right now. They're going to have as much solar energy as we have across the whole country for all existing power sources within the next couple of years. If we want to compete against China, they're recognizing that this is a cheap, reliable, affordable technology of the future that we absolutely have to have, that we need to have for American competitiveness, as well as the jobs and the environmental benefits and everything else.
Well, Bob, as I said, we're winding down our time on this show, and we'll definitely have you back again in another episode, I hope. But as we move into these last few weeks, is there one message that if you could give to the United States Senate and members of Congress, what would it be?
Well, look, and your representative there, Representative Lawler, is going to be key to this, and he understands the importance of clean energy and the jobs and the investments that are coming to that region, and the need to develop cheap, clean energy. So we hope that he will stay strong on that. But really, the message is, don't kill this good thing that's happening right now, because we will pay for it in this country in spades. Mm-hmm. We're seeing the results right now in these cancellations. We're going to see the results of something like that happening when it comes to energy supplies and costs and American competitiveness, as Ron was mentioning.
Well, we have a lot of work to do, and I'm very excited about the fact that the Business Council of Westchester, under Ron Kamen's leadership, has the Clean Energy Action Coalition, which will be working very closely with E2. So our guests today, again, have been Bob Keefe, who is the Executive Director of E2, and Ron Kamen, the founder of EarthKind Energy, the Director, and also the Director of the BCW's Clean Energy Action Coalition. Bob and Ron, thank you very much for being with us today, and let's continue to work together and make sure that we can do all we can to give people the facts that they need to hopefully make the right decisions. This is John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Business Council of Westchester. You've been listening to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, part of the BCW Podcast Network. We want to thank again our sponsor, Con Edison, for sponsoring today's show.
Be sure to check out the BCW Podcast Network's expansive lineup of shows: Leadership Unleashed, What's Trending, Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, The Member Spotlight, and Nonprofit Voices of Impact. The Business Council of Westchester is the county's largest business membership organization focusing on economic development and advocacy. With over 1,100 members, it is our mission to work for the profitability of our members and the prosperity of the Westchester community. To learn more, go to thebcw.org.